Into the future. There's many reasons why people choose to advance through it. Some want to get stronger. Some want to fight even harder enemies. Some just might want to get views on YouTube. But whatever the case, one thing is for certain. The journey isn't easy. But what if we made it even more challenging? In Battle Cats, every cat in a lineup is important. Whether it be for meat shields, damage dealers, or support units, every cat matters. Take just one slot away, and you're already at a disadvantage. But what if you took all of them away, and you were left with one slot from the very beginning? Could you still be into the future with only one slot? Welcome to One Slot Battle Cats. Now, what better way is there to kick us off with a bang than a guaranteed Uber draw? The event on at this time was Ochoso's, one of the best Uber sets for this challenge. Most of these cats in the set were spammable, along with decent attacks and abilities. There was one really good cat in here that I wanted, but I would just have to hope for the best. From that roll, I got 2 Ubers, which is pretty lucky. But while the 2 Ubers I got were pretty decent, none of them were particularly outstanding. Kachi Kachi has a chance to weaken aliens and angels, and Urashima Taro takes less damage from blacks and angels. They weren't the ideal cats I would have wanted, but I had to take what I could get. Sadly, I didn't have enough XP to upgrade any of these Ubers, so I decided to start my journey into Chapter 1 of Into the Future. In most of the early levels, I was just using the same cats as I did before in Empire of Cats, and it was going pretty well. The new enemies that appeared, such as Alien Hippo, Crab, and Seal, were a bit tough to beat though, and that wasn't a very good sign for me. There are 47 levels before the final boss, with each level being more difficult than the last, so having a tough time here means that this was going to be one long, difficult challenge. A few levels later, and I got to Cambodia, where the alien moth first appears, along with some alien hippos as support units. The alien hippos were already tough enough, but with the alien moth added as a boss, there was no way I could beat this level with the current cats I had. So instead, I chose to use a cat I got before in a previous draw, Rover Cat. Rover Cat is a spammable cat with high DPS, and most importantly, he was also strong against aliens. After a pretty long fight, I finally killed the moth and beat the stage. But after facing these levels, things became more and more apparent to me. Ninja and Titan, who basically carried me throughout Empire of Cats, were starting to struggle against these tougher levels, which was just shown when they couldn't beat the alien moth. You have to understand something here. I felt that these cats were my closest friends. I've played throughout Empire of Cats the whole time with them by my side. So just like what you would do to any friend who's been having a tough time recently, you ditch them and get new ones. Problem solved. My new best friend now was Sushi Cat. Sushi Cat's cooldown was half of Titan Cat's, along with more health and a good amount of damage. Basically, Sushi was superior to both Ninja and Titan in almost every single way, not to mention his resistance and weaken against red enemies. With Sushi, I would be able to progress even further Into the Future. The next few levels I would try to get by with trial and error. Philippines had very hard enemies that came later on in the stage, so I had to use a sniper and a rich cat to rush down the stage before they could overwhelm my units. The level after that, I used Sushi Cat to beat 2 red faces, which was fairly easy with his abilities. Then KG to beat the alien moth and kangaroos in Australia. And finally, I arrived at the Great Abyss. In all of the levels previous to the Great Abyss, I obtained every superior treasure and activated 1 out of my 2 crystals in this chapter. Crystals, which you unlock from getting treasures, reduces an alien's attack and health by around 15% per crystal fully activated. This would make some of the previous aliens that appeared before, like the alien moth or hippo, be a tiny bit easier to beat. Now for the first true boss fight of this video. The first part of the level is easy enough with only a few alien dogs and penguins to fight off my units. That is, until the boss first appears. I Am Face is a floating alien type enemy who is going to be absurdly difficult to beat. If we compare him to Bun Bun in Empire of Cats, I Am Face is weaker with around 2/3 of both his health and damage. But considering that I beat Bun Bun in Empire of Cats with my one and only free cat god use, my future wasn't too bright. This time I would have to face the boss head on. And as you might expect, I didn't stand much of a chance. Sushi, my main cat to progress, only got it down to 98%. My best attempt by far was using Dragon Cat, who even then could only get it down to 80%. This was a pretty big issue. I had gotten all the treasures and I've already got stuck on not even the main boss of this chapter. With all of my cats failing to beat the level, the only solution I could think of was raw stats and user rank. First, I used up all of my saved cat tickets that haven't been used yet. This slightly increased my stats, but nothing that would be too noticeable in a level. Nowhere near enough to beat the Great Abyss. Secondly, user rank. User rank goes up by 1 every time you upgrade any cat by 1 level. The importance of user rank is level caps. Currently, all of my cats were stuck at a max cap of level 20. Once you reach a certain user rank, the level cap of your cats increase. At user rank 900, I would be able to increase the cap of my rare cats to level 25. At 1000, super rares to 25, and at 1100, uber rares to 25. Then at 1200, the cap of rare cats increases again to 30 and repeats the cycle again. At this point, I was around 500 user rank. I would almost need to double that in order to get my user rank to 900, the lowest rank required to raise a level cap. To increase my user rank, I used some cats in my storage and sold some others I didn't need. In the end, I had totaled to about 4 million in XP. Not too much, but hopefully enough to reach user rank 900. And finally, the grand reveal of my user rank. Only about 800. It increased by 300, but still not enough to upgrade even my rare cats to level 25. I upgraded all of my cheaper cats as well, so it would only become harder and harder to increase my user rank, as I only had expensive cats left to upgrade. The only thing that was holding me back now was XP. So I immediately started to grind for some more during XP and weekend stages, which are both good sources for XP. But luckily, while I was doing that, a specific event draw appeared. This was undoubtedly one of the best draws that I could do, if not the best draw for this challenge. The off-brand Pokemon Squad. I mean the Elemental Pixies. Each and every one of these Ubers is made to fight aliens. Each one has resistance against aliens, which means that they only take 1/4 of damage from them. They also have their own different anti-alien abilities as well. Volta freezes, Bora deals massive damage, Mizzly slows, and Gravy has wave attacks. But there was one Uber I wanted to avoid. Air. Air is another pixie that is a long-ranged attacker. And the worst cats I could possibly use in this challenge are long-ranged attackers. Let's take a thought experiment here. For example, a long-ranged attacker such as Air. Every long-ranged attacker has a blind spot that they give up in order to reach a further distance. So if enemy X gets inside Air's blind spot, he has no way to attack it, and basically, he's dead. But before we roll, how on earth would I get all the cat food I need for these draws? This is also a guaranteed Uber draw, so getting enough cat food to roll the 11 draw was pretty important. Luckily, I had a large amount of cat food stored in my missions that I hadn't collected yet, and also more in my cat guide, where you get 5 cat food per new cat you unlock. This gave me more than enough cat food for a guaranteed draw. With that all done, it's finally time for the roll. I'll cut it a bit short. For the last guaranteed draw, I got Air. And Bora as well on a non-guaranteed draw, so I guess I can't complain. Bora is the best cat out of this set for this challenge, with 3 times the damage and 4 times the health against aliens. While the other Ubers in this set are decent, they're more for status effects and support, which isn't great when there's nothing to support but itself. In this challenge, pure brute force was the way to go. I was pretty disappointed with Air, but I got Bora, the best one for this challenge out of this whole set, and maybe even one of the best cats for this challenge in general, so I was pretty happy. I got a few other cats as well, ranging from just plain useless to extremely important, but none of which would be noteworthy as of yet. I had plenty of XP from grinding for a higher user rank, so I used all that to fully upgrade Bora. With Bora fully upgraded, it was finally time to test whether or not he was up for the challenge against the Great Abyss, where even my best cats didn't stand a single chance. In the first part of the stage, I did my best to stack as many Boras as I could before the boss came out, which was fairly easy with his cooldown being quicker than most other Ubers. And now, it was time for the rematch. There's a reason why I said Bora was one of the best cats for this challenge. Even with only Bora's base attack, he could one-shot all of the supporting enemies in this stage that weren't even aliens. But when his abilities come into play, that's when Bora becomes an almost unstoppable force against aliens. With both resistance and massive damage against aliens, Bora could both tank dozens of hits from the boss, but also deal a fourth of the boss's HP with one single attack. Bora can absolutely shred through any level with aliens, and this stage wasn't much of an exception. Bora was on another level compared to my previous cats, and with him, I overcame a huge wall that once stood in my way. And I had to admit, I was pretty nervous. Losing to this stage would mean that I would have to grind for user ranks, which would take at least a week by minimum. Luckily, with Bora, I wouldn't have to suffer through that anytime soon. Now, time to sit back and relax for a bit, since the next few levels should be a lot easier than the Great Abyss. Why do this to me? After all the time and effort I put in, just to lose to the very next stage. What did I even do to deserve this? I mean, yeah, I might have sent tens of thousands of cats to brutally slaughter other animals and to take over the world, all for my own entertainment, but is that really too much to ask for? Why is this world so cruel? Should I just give up now? What's the point of even trying if I just lose to some random stage again? Goodbye. Goodbye, cruel world. But then I remembered. The main ingredient of a cat is happiness. Always be thankful. It's okay to cry. It's okay to run away. You were not made that strong. Do you hear it? There's a cat in each of our hearts. To realize something, you need imagination and action. That's right, I couldn't give up. If I gave up now, who else would make these poor cats and enemies suffer and die beautifully? That's right, no one. This was only something I could do. And in order to do that, I would need to become even stronger than before. So yeah, time to grind XP and cat ticket stages for the next month. Hooray! Yeah, why did I sign up for this? While I grind for those two things, let me take some time to explain about the level I got stuck on, which was Madagascar, the stage right after the Great Abyss. First of all, Bora was completely out of the question. Like I said before, Bora can absolutely shred through any level that has aliens. But that's only against aliens. And Into the Future isn't completely filled with aliens, which is where Bora can't help me. Madagascar has blacks, angels, and meadows, which are all enemies that Bora isn't effective against. I tried with all of my best cats, but in the end, I was simply just too weak. But not anymore. With around 150 clears on the cat ticket stage, and 150 clears on the weekend stage, I got 15 million XP and 69 cat tickets. That's a pretty large amount considering I'm only at chapter 1 of Into the Future. You may also notice the large difference in cat food and rare tickets from before. During this time, I fought numerous zombie outbreaks, collected my Gamatoto earnings, or just got them from logging in. Now the only thing left to do was to use up my cat tickets and XP I grinded for. After all of that, I reached exactly 1200 user rank, the exact amount to be able to upgrade rare cats to level 30. I also got a large amount of cat upgrades and converted a few that were left over into rare tickets. So now that I could upgrade my cats to level 30, which one would I upgrade? The one cat that I was going to be focusing on is Mermaid Cat. Mermaid Cat, or the second form Commando Cat, is a mediocre cat, and I hadn't upgraded her mainly because she was capped out at level 20. But as most of you know, you can evolve a gacha unit to their true form at level 30 with cat fruit and some XP. In this case, Mermaid Cat evolves from a mediocre cat into one of the best mid-range attackers in the game, Cameraman Cat. She is spammable, has area attacks, good DPS, and could survive a lethal strike. In other words, very good for this challenge. But there was one small issue. I didn't have any XP left to upgrade any of my units. I was broke, just like in real life. Oh right, the video. XP was easy to obtain, although somewhat grindy, but the harder part was going to be getting cat fruit. Luckily, all of the cat fruit stages were on, and I had plenty of leaderships to spare with all of my user rank rewards. To evolve Cameraman Cat, I needed 2 purple cat fruit seeds, 3 red seeds, 1 blue seed, 1 yellow seed, and 2 green cat fruit, which is basically every cat fruit color excluding the special ones. This meant that I would have to beat, at the very least, the weakest of each of these cat fruit levels. Each of these cat fruit levels all have a small chance of dropping a cat fruit or a cat fruit seed. It's pretty straightforward. Each color corresponds to a cat fruit. Aliens, which are blue, get blue cat fruit, red enemies get red, black enemies get purple, angels get yellow, and floating gets green? Makes sense, I guess. I could complete some of the cat fruit stages easily, like the alien one with Bora, who absolutely destroyed the level. The floating stage, however, was a bit more difficult. I was using Sadako Cat, a super rare cat that is resistant against floating. The main enemy attackers were directly behind the boss and therefore unkillable, which was why it was so hard. To counter this, all I really needed to do was to lure out the attackers, kill them, and fight the boss one-on-one. Not too hard. But some of them were actually insanely difficult to beat, which I didn't expect. Growing Red, where I thought that my sushi cat would easily win, lost. KG in Uber that's resistant to black units, also a loss in Growing Purple. I didn't have any good cats for angels, apart from Artist Cat, who has resistance against them, so Growing Yellow also ended up in a loss. This was a bit worrying, as I needed these cat fruit to evolve Cameraman Cat, who would then in turn allow me to progress further into the future. But don't worry, there is a solution. Remember when I reached user rank 1200? Not only did I raise the level caps of my rare cats to level 30, but also my super and uber rares to level 25. While I still couldn't upgrade my ubers or super rares to level 30, I was still able to upgrade them to level 25 for better stats. And after a bit more grinding, I obtained enough XP to upgrade the cats I needed. My sushi cat went from level 20 to 25, and that little push was enough for me to beat the level. The same went with my level 25 KG, who was very expensive to upgrade, but barely beat the level. And upgrading Artist Cat from 20 to 30 was more than enough to beat the level. With everything I needed to evolve Commando Cat, it was finally time to put everything I worked for to good use. And at last, I had obtained Cameraman Cat, the fruit of my labor, and it was finally time to start advancing further into the future. Playing back Madagascar was so much easier than before. Cameraman's spam ability and high stats alone could easily destroy every enemy in the level. It took a bit because of the Meadow Hippos, but I finally overcame this obstacle, and in doing so, became so much stronger as well. The next levels were also pretty easy. Some took a while to beat, but in the end, my Cameraman Cat was just too strong for most of these levels. Every so often, I would have to switch out Cameraman for Bora. Since Cameraman's range isn't very high, it makes it very difficult to beat enemies that outrange her, especially with her slow speed. It started to get a lot more difficult as I neared the end of the chapter, and I had to evolve Rover Cat to beat Greenland, a stage with multiple alien bears. I had plenty of XP from beating all of the stages previous to Greenland, and also a lot of extra cat fruit I've been grinding for on the side, so evolving him was no big deal. Grinding for cat fruit was no longer an issue with the evolution of Cameraman Cat, who could easily solo all of the cat fruit levels my other cats struggled on. Catalite, Rover's true form, also helped me beat New York, my first encounter with a shockwave unit. And then came along NASA. NASA is one of the top 3 hardest levels in this chapter, including the moon. It had a difficult boss, the alien face, along with black and alien enemies to support it. This ruled out Bora due to his difficulty against hybrid stages that aren't completely filled with aliens. None of my other cats worked as well, which meant that I would have to switch things up a bit, and that meant only one thing: gacha rolls. Currently, it was the Nekalugas, who are the absolute worst Ubers to have in this challenge, but it was a guaranteed Uber event, and I could use some extra XP. The reason for rolling the gacha was for one specific cat. It's pretty common, but I didn't get it yet. So I just rolled and hoped for the best. My guaranteed draw didn't give me the cats I wanted, and while I did get 2 extra Ubers, they were unusable. This is because every single Nekaluga has super low health, a low attack rate, and high cooldown, which is the exact opposite of what I want in my cats. I had a few rare tickets left, so I decided to roll them as well in the hopes of getting the cat I wanted. And on the second roll, I got just what I needed. Salon Cat. Salon Cat was a total opposite of the Nekalugas, with decent health, high attack rate, and a very low cooldown. Anyways, I sold my Ubers I got from the 11 draw, and used the rest. With my large amount of cat fruit I've been grinding for over time, I could easily evolve my Salon Cat into Cyborg Cat. In any case, she was the right pick and was able to easily beat NASA. Cyborg is an amazing cat, but more on that later. We were nearing the end of chapter 1, and the next 2 stages passed by with a breeze. Bora could easily beat this stage with only aliens in Bermuda, and Cyborg could easily beat a meadow and alien hybrid stage in Brazil. And finally, we arrived at the floating continent, the level right before the final stage of the chapter. But before that, we would need to focus on the immediate threat first. After beating Brazil, I unlocked all of the treasures up to this point, and most importantly, my second crystal. Now all alien magnifications were down to 500% compared to the original 700%. So floating continent. At first, I thought this level wouldn't be much of a challenge, but after I played it, it became very clear that its difficulty was on a whole nother level than before. It starts off with Angel Hippos and Doges at the very start, and upon base damage, an alien boar comes out. Even with my 2 crystals, he has 800,000 health along with 9,000 damage a hit. In comparison, that's 3 times the amount of HP the alien face has. Everything I had failed. Paris, Cameraman, and Catalite just couldn't hold their own against the pure brute force of the alien boar. In a way, it sort of reminded me of Chapter 3 Moon, except that there was no free god ability to help us anymore. Now, I did have Bora, but then comes the reason why this stage is so hard. After the first initial wave, the angel enemies periodically come out, and when they do, they deal massive amounts of damage to Bora, as he only takes less damage from aliens. This causes him to lose significant portions of his health that were meant for the boss. But eventually, he does reach the base while on low health. And then the boar appears, and it quickly goes downhill once again. Bora has a decently long windup to unleash his attack onto enemies, which isn't normally a problem, until that is, the alien boar's ability comes into play. The alien boar has a 50% chance to knock back my units, and because of Bora's long windup, it becomes extremely difficult for Bora to even get a single attack off without his attack animation being reset. But I did have one last trick up my sleeve. My Bora was currently capped at level 25, but I could increase that to 30. To do that, I would have to get my user rank to 1400, which was not far off from what I currently have. With all of the XP I collected over the course of Into the Future, it was more than enough to reach it. And after a few million XP, I made it to user rank 1400. I could now upgrade not only my Uber Rares, but my Super Rares to level 30 as well. I got Bora to level 30 and hoped all would go well. The thing is, a level 25 to 30 gap isn't that much of a difference. Would it be enough? I just had to pray that it would be. My first attempt went poorly, and I kept on losing many more times after that. In fact, After playing this level over and over again for around 50 times, I was starting to lose hope. Like I said before, this level was heavily dependent on RNG. If you get knocked back by the boar too much, you lose. If you get damaged too much by the angels at the start, you lose. Bora's level increase let him be that tiny bit more stackable, which did show improvement compared to before. And just when I was about to give up, something miraculous happened. I had 3 Boras make it past the angels with a good amount of HP left. And with almost perfect RNG, along with well-timed sniper cats and cat cannons, I won. I had done it. Turns out just 5 levels did make the world of a difference. And finally, I arrived at the moon, the final boss, and level of the chapter. I equipped Bora and jumped straight in. As it turned out, the level was relatively easy. It took a long time, but Bora was an alien killing machine. After all, he was built for these levels with purely aliens and not a mix of enemies like in Floating Continent. And with that, the challenge was over. All in all, it was a fun journey. There were plenty of difficult obstacles blocking my way, but maybe the end result wasn't the important part. In the end, maybe the real one-slot battle cats were the friend. Wait a minute, why do I hear another soundtrack playing? And why are we only halfway through the video? No, it can't be. There's another chapter? Well, that means only one thing. With Chapter 1 of Into the Future beaten, it was time to tackle Chapter 2. The second chapter of Into the Future was similar to the first chapter, except that it had a few more enemies. Oh, and all the enemies were 3 times stronger in both health and damage than before. Now that we're nearing the harder levels, it's time to use my actual good cats. You may notice that I'm only really using Paris Cat for general levels. That's because Paris is basically the cat for this challenge. Compared to Cameraman Cat, Paris has the same damage, same health, more range, faster movement speed, faster attack animations, and most importantly, twice as faster on cooldown. Basically, a better version of Cameraman Cat that is able to be produced twice as fast. While Paris is more expensive than Cameraman Cat, that isn't really an issue because I only have 1 cat to spam anyways. This basically makes Cameraman useless, as well as Sushi Cat, who I used to progress in the beginning, although I doubt anyone remembers him anymore. The first new difficult enemy I encountered was Cyberhorn. I had to redo this stage multiple times, and I barely beat this one with the help of Sniper Cat, as you can see by my base health. The next few levels started to ramp up in difficulty, and I barely made it to the halfway point of the chapter, the Great Abyss. Beating the previous stage granted me my 3rd crystal, which meant that the recently buffed aliens would be a tiny bit weaker. And with that, it's time to actually play the stage. The boss of this stage, Galactic Overseer Nyundum, is basically the same as a boss in Chapter 2 of Empire of Cats. The only difference is, he has 5 times the health and 17 times the damage, along with a 50% higher attack speed and the ability to slow down all my cats. There's also those cyberhorns that I could barely beat before that spawn periodically in waves. It wasn't looking too good for me. And just like I thought, Bora didn't stand a single chance. All of the enemies in the stage were so overpowering that Bora basically died to the supporting enemies alone. That's just how badly outmatched Bora was, even with his enhanced abilities against aliens. Paris and Catalite didn't work either, so now it's clear that I somehow need my cats to become even stronger. But I've already reached the max cat levels and evolved my cats. What else could I even do? Well, how about Bora? He isn't a true form yet, right? That's true, but to evolve Bora, I would need to get 3 Epic Cat Fruit. To obtain Epic Cat Fruit, you have to either get a 1% drop from a Cat Fruit stage, or you need to beat a stage called Cat Fruit Jubilee, which has a 5% chance of appearing after beating a Cat Fruit stage. Unfortunately, my cats couldn't beat Cat Fruit Jubilee yet. I already had 1 drop of an Epic Cat Fruit, but it would take forever to obtain the other 2 at a 1% drop rate. There was one other option to take though, but to do that, I would need to increase my user rank to 1600. User rank 1600 is important, but I'll get into that later. In any case, it wasn't too far off from what I currently have. So anyways, I started grinding. Paris was a big help in beating harder XP stages, but it ultimately came down to pure grinding in the end. But while that was happening, another event draw appeared yet again. Ultra Souls had returned for the 2nd time. Maybe this time, I could get the cat I wanted. It wasn't a guaranteed Uber draw, but I wasn't going to waste my opportunity. And I got the exact cat I wanted. Casa Jizo. One of the best cats in the whole game. He's spammable and has higher health and damage than Paris. I got him to level 30, and it was time to get revenge on the Great Abyss. Well, that didn't go quite as I planned. After my initial excitement started to wear off, I noticed a few things. Jizo is just not as good as Paris Cat. Well, in this challenge at the very least. It's similar to comparing Cameraman to Paris. Jizo has better stats, but when including cooldown as a factor, Jizo just isn't as good as Paris. Jizo's low cost and high value makes him one of the best cats in the game, but his longer cooldown just makes him fall flat here. Anyways, it was back to grinding for user rank. Jizo let me grind XP a lot more efficiently than Paris, which really sped up the process. A few days later, and I obtained the XP I needed in order to get my user rank to 1600. After a few upgrades, I finally made it with plenty of extra XP left. Getting user rank 1600 meant a few things. First, I would obtain an Epic Cat Fruit from a previous user rank reward, which means only 1 more until I can evolve Bora. Second, I could now upgrade my special cats to level 30. But this wouldn't be that useful because I don't use any special cats in the first place. And finally, the most important thing of all. Cat's Eyes. Cat's Eyes let you raise the level cap of one of your units by 1 level all the way up to 40. Since my cats were capped at level 30, I could theoretically increase all of them to level 40. Each Cat's Eye has an assigned rarity, so special Cat's Eyes for special cats, rare Cat's Eyes for rare cats, and so on. so I would need 10 of one rarity to get one cat to level 40. Well, okay, but how do I get them in the first place? For now, the only way I could obtain these cat's eyes was through Gamatoto, the guy who you send out in expeditions for items in return. I've been grinding him up from the very start of this challenge for this specific reason. The higher your Gamatoto level is, the more areas you unlock. Previously, these 2 exploration areas with cat's eyes were locked due to my low user rank, but now I was able to access them. I currently had 2 cat's eyes that I could obtain through Gamatoto, which were special and rare cat's eyes. Special cat's eyes would be useless to me, so instead, I focused on rare cat's eyes, which would be much more useful. And after a few days, I collected enough cat's eyes in order to get one rare cat to level 40. The cat that I decided to use it on was Paris Cat, my best cat so far. After upgrading my Paris Cat to level 40, it was time to revisit the Great Abyss once again. The main threat here was not the boss, but the cyberhorns that come out supporting the boss. Cyberhorns are scary. They have lots of health and are sort of a mini alien boar, but slower. The cyberhorns come out in waves, and when they do, they push hard. And the harder they push, the closer the boss comes to my base, and the closer I come to losing. While the boss isn't much of a threat by himself, if he reaches my base, I'm probably doomed. So during the time that there aren't any cyberhorns on the field, I need to deal as much damage as possible to the boss in order to knock him back and gain back ground I lost during the cyberhorn waves. The battle items I used really helped as well, with my sniper cat being able to knock back the boss mid-attack to deal a bit more damage, and hold off the cyberhorns a bit better as well. My rich cat solved money issues, and the cat CPU could spam out Paris cats a lot faster than I could. The stage was pretty difficult, but in the end, my Paris cats held back the cyberhorn waves and killed the boss faster than they could kill me. And with the help of my higher user rank and cat size, I overcame yet another great obstacle in my way. And after that, it was pretty smooth sailing. I had trouble on a few other levels, but just using some battle items or different cats were enough to beat most of them. For one stage, I had to evolve Sushi Cat to Ro Cat since all of the enemies in the stage were red and my Paris Cat could not handle them. However, this did use up one epic cat fruit. It took a few tries to complete, but I eventually beat the level. Then I arrived at NASA, and this stage was super difficult. The start features some semi-challenging enemies, such as Scizoroo, but after a while, the main boss appears, the alien face. Not only was the enemy face buffed, but also had dark otters to support it, who are pretty tanky and push hard against my cats. Paris, my best cat, failed, and Bora would not work because the level contained a hybrid of black and aliens. My best attempt after 20 tries or so was only down to 30% boss HP, not enough to justify attempting any more and wasting more battle items. And yet again, I was stuck on another stage. This time though, NASA wouldn't be as easy to beat as in Chapter 1. But like always, there was something I could do to overcome this. I currently could only get special and rare cat's eyes through Gamatoto, but not any uber cat's eyes. Every so often, an event appears in the cat ticket draw where you can draw cat's eyes instead of normal cats. And I've been collecting cat tickets from daily logins but also clearing large amounts of cat ticket stages. In the end, I collected about 100 tickets in total, and now they would hopefully be put to good use. And from every one of those cat tickets, I obtained 7 uber rare cat's eyes in total. Not too bad, but not ideal either. I chose to upgrade Bora with all of my cat's eyes, which hopefully would be enough to beat this stage. Filled with hope, determination, and over a month of grinding, I bravely stepped forward and immediately got massacred again. In the end, Bora just wasn't the cat that was capable of beating NASA, and after failing to beat NASA for the second time, I realized something. This stage was going to be absurdly difficult to beat. The Dark Otters and Alien Face were not the only difficult enemies in this stage. Scissoros, Alien Poodles, and even Dark Doges were huge threats. Scissoros have high stats and a 50% chance to knock back my cats. Alien Poodles have low health but deal insane amounts of damage in one hit. And Dark Doges are quick and aren't affected by anti-alien abilities. So what could I do to beat this level? I could try to evolve Bora, but obtaining the remaining 2 cat fruit at a 1% chance would take forever. That would be a last-ditch effort. But before we do that, I did have another way around this. Gotcha. Currently, there were 2 events active, Best of the Best and Dark Heroes. I was looking for a very specific cat in Dark Heroes, but the chances of me getting it was pretty much 0. But compared to the alternative of having to grind for hours in order to evolve Bora, I was more than happy to take the gamble. I had plenty of cat food and rare tickets, so the only thing to do now was to just hope luck would be on my side. And I actually got the cat I wanted, Dr. Heaven. In every main event draw, a legend rare can be obtained at a 0.3 drop rate, and in the Dark Heroes, Dr. Heaven was that legend rare. Obtaining Dr. Heaven was going to be a game changer, and I still had plenty of rare tickets left to spare as well. I mostly sold all of the cats I got from the draws, as they probably wouldn't be that useful, starting with the only other rare drop I got, Akira. Akira is a mediocre generalist Uber, and without anything between him and his enemies, he's basically helpless in this challenge. So why did I want Dr. Heaven? Well, first of all, Dr. Heaven is a pretty good general unit, but where this legend rare shines are in her abilities. Specifically, against black and aliens. Dr. Heaven has 2 forms, the first one being Dr. Heaven, and the second one being Professor Abyss. Dr. Heaven is insanely tough against aliens and blacks, while Professor Abyss deals insane damage to aliens and blacks. By insane damage and insanely tough, it's actually an ability, not an exaggeration. Let's compare him to Bora, who deals massive damage and is resistant to aliens, which means that he deals 3 times the damage and takes 1/4 of damage from them. On the other hand, insane damage deals 5 times more damage than normal, and insanely tough has 6 times more health than normal against its targeted traits. And NASA only has 2 traits, aliens and blacks, exactly what my legend rare is specialized for. There could not be a single cat more perfect to beat NASA than this exact cat, I have right now. And with that, it was finally time to beat NASA. Well, maybe the first form just isn't the correct ability for this level. Maybe Insanely Tough wasn't the correct option, and Insane Damage would do the trick. And what I had thought to be the perfect counter to this level failed. But it wasn't over yet. After a few more attempts with some battle items, I quickly found some strategies I could use. That's right, strategy. It may seem pretty brainless to just spam units over and over again, and for the most part, that's pretty much true. But a few of these levels I did earlier actually did require some form of strategy. When attempting this stage, I discovered some small details that are key to beating the level. A lot of it revolved around timing. When to send out my legend rare, when to use my cat cannon, and when to turn on and off my sniper cat. After experimenting with different timings, trying to find the optimal form to beat the level, and just playing the level over and over again, I finally lost all hope. I had the absolute perfect cat to beat this stage. Dr. Heaven was quite literally a perfect counter with his abilities, being able to cover both black and alien enemies. But despite that, the enemies were just too strong. I had no other options, no better cat to obtain, and no more treasures to make my cat stronger against these aliens. All this time grinding for this challenge, was it all for nothing? Was this the end? My cat food, cat god, even my cat cannon. Wait a minute. Cannon? Cat cannon? That's right. There was just one more tiny thing that could tip the scales in my favor once again. But to do that, we would have to go back to the very start of this challenge. Over the course of the whole game, Gamatoto was not the only thing I kept leveling up. To the right of Gamatoto, you encounter the Ototo Core. As most of you already know, in Ototo Core, you can construct new cat cannons with materials dropped in Stories of Legends, which I've been doing a whole lot of. And from the very start of this challenge until right now, I've focused all of my energy into getting my slow beam constructed and leveled up. After doing some material stages as well, over the course of Into the Future, I eventually leveled up my slow beam to level 10. The slow beam cat cannon at level 10 applies a slow effect onto all of the enemies on the field for a second and a half. And that second and a half could be just enough to give me that tiny edge to win. From the very start of this challenge, I've struggled through difficult bosses, found new ways around levels, and powered up my cats. I refined my button pressing craft and surpassed my limits. I endured severe boredom while grinding and dedicated my mind, body, and soul to this challenge. And now, with my new cat cannon ready to go, forged from my blood, sweat, and tears from this entire playthrough, there was no way I was going to lose. I lost again. But it wasn't over yet. In Ototo Core, there is something else you can upgrade. Not a cat cannon effect, but your cat base health. Throughout all of my attempts in trying to beat NASA, I realized a few things. Base health is really important. During all of my attempts, my legend rare dies because of health. Well, duh. Of course it does. Let me explain a bit better. In this stage, I need to keep my legend rare alive. If my legend rare dies, there's nothing keeping the enemies from bullying my poor cat base. So in order to keep my legend rare alive as long as possible, I need to actually have my cat base tank some hits for my legend rare. Preferably, I would want my cat base to tank so much that it would be on the verge of death, but not die. Otherwise, I would lose the level. Instead of my legend rare tanking all of the hits, both the cat base and my legend rare would be splitting the damage between them. This should help decrease the damage my legend rare takes in order to have the best chance of surviving, so she can either A, survive long enough for another legend rare to spawn, or B, simply destroying the enemy base. And finally, after a few days of grinding for base materials, my cat base health reached level 10. From a level 1 to 10 upgrade, that's an additional 36,000 base health. But before we revisit NASA, we need to talk about one of the core issues of this challenge. It's the reason why I have to replay levels like NASA over and over again, and on the surface, the issue can seem pretty harmless. When you're only playing with one slot, there are a few big issues you have to deal with. There's the obvious issues like not having any meat shields, support units, or becoming mentally traumatized. But the problem I'm worried about isn't so obvious. It's enemy spawn RNG. To put it simply, some enemies don't follow the same exact spawning patterns in a level. For example, these are 4 different attempts in NASA that are playing at the same time. Ignoring the rest of the enemies, if you look closely at the alien doges in this level, they're all spawning at different times. This is the result of enemy spawn RNG. In NASA, the Alien Doge, Dark Doge, Alien Pudo, and Scissoroo are all affected by this randomization. But if you're wondering why they're all spawning at the same time now, that's because they get randomized later on. Now, if you've played a decent amount of Battle Cats, you've probably known this. But even if you did, you probably never cared about it. And that's not without good reason, because it really doesn't matter. When you play normally, who cares if some enemies spawn at slightly different times? It has barely any effect on you. But with one slot, enemy spawn RNG becomes the most important factor in whether or not I lose to a level. Now let's take a quick thought experiment to show exactly why this is. In this thought experiment, 2 enemies appear, an Alien Doge and an Alien Pudo, who are both fighting Professor Abyss. Since enemy spawn RNG causes slight changes in when enemies spawn, it creates 2 different situations. In situation A, the Alien Pudo is right behind the Alien Doge. But in situation B, the Alien Pudo is a bit further behind the Alien Doge. And the difference between these 2 situations are night and day. In situation A, Professor Abyss would attack normally, killing 2 enemies at the same time. But in situation B, Professor Abyss would only kill the Alien Doge and miss the Alien Pudo, who would be just outside her range. That tiny difference in enemy spawn RNG lets the Alien Pudo escape death, which lets it freely attack Professor Abyss. And with only one slot available, there's nothing stopping it until Professor Abyss attacks again. This situation is made even worse when you have cats like Professor Abyss or Bora, who both have a long duration between their attacks. By the time Professor Abyss kills it, she would have already lost a large portion of her health just from that one interaction. And that's just one interaction out of the dozens more that happen in NASA. Every time enemies spawn, they can either be in some variation of situation A or situation B. In order to beat NASA, I basically just have to pray that I get a large majority of situation A's rather than B's. The thing is, From all of my experience playing NASA, Situation B is much more common than Situation A. This is exactly why I have to replay levels like NASA or Floating Continent in Chapter 1 over and over again. As much as I can time when to send out my cats, when to use my cat cannon, or when to turn on and off my sniper cat, at the end of the day, I'm just at the mercy of this RNG. But that doesn't mean I can't do anything about it. From my first encounter with NASA, I obtained a new legend rare, built a new cat cannon, and increased my base health. Those weren't all for nothing, and now, it was finally time to prove that point. I've basically done everything I could do to increase my chances of beating NASA. Now, the only thing left to do is to just keep trying over and over again until— Wait a minute. Did you guys just hear that in the background? Oh wait, false alarm. It's just the sweet, sweet sound of victory. That's right. After countless more tries of loss after loss, it finally happened. I won. But to see how I got here, we'll have to rewind a bit. It started off like any other boring, monotonous attempt. I sent out Professor Abyss at the same exact time as always, and stared at my phone with my cold, lifeless eyes. Surprisingly, Professor Abyss actually took care of the initial wave of aliens pretty well, in fact, probably the best I've ever seen her do. But I couldn't get my hopes up just yet. The second obstacle in NASA is the alien face. Using my slow beam on it allows Professor Abyss to land a free hit, which is huge considering that it only takes 2 hits to kill it. Luckily, the alien face didn't land any freeze attacks on her and only got 2 attacks off, which is the least I've ever gotten away with. Even in all of my attempts I did before, beating the alien face was quite rare, and I've barely taken any damage so far either. But then again, the most difficult part of the level is still ahead of me. It's when the Dark Otters, Alien Poodles, and Scissoros all start to spawn in. And this is when enemy spawn RNG matters the most. Now, it's just up to getting more Situation A's rather than Situation B's. At this point, I would usually get a couple of bad interactions and the run would end. But this time, it didn't happen. In fact, throughout the whole level, I only got Situation A's and 0 Situation B's. If you watch carefully, the main threats only ever get 1 shot off maximum towards Professor Abyss. I can't stress how insanely rare that is. That saves Professor Abyss so much HP, and with that, I finally beat NASA. Everything I did up to this point finally paid off. Without my slow beam, I wouldn't have been able to kill the alien face so easily, nor would I be able to buy Professor Abyss more time to attack. Without my additional 36,000 base health, this run would have already been over at the very beginning. And of course, without rolling in Dark Heroes and getting my legend rare, this level would be impossible to beat in the first place. Everything came together, and to be honest, this victory was a huge relief. After failing to beat this level time after time, I was starting to doubt if it was even possible in the first place. Now I finally scaled the huge mountain of NASA that seemed impossible to overcome. But waiting for me at the peak of NASA wasn't relief or fulfillment. Instead, what was waiting up there were just 2 much bigger, more menacing peaks. Like I mentioned before, NASA is only the third hardest level in Into the Future. There were still 2 much more difficult levels ahead of me. Lucky for me though, that's not the next 2 levels. The next 2 levels after NASA didn't pose any threats. Bermuda, a stage filled with aliens, was easily destroyed by Bora thanks to his anti-alien abilities. The level after that, Brazil, contained cyberhorns who were still quite difficult for me to beat, but just using Paris Cat and a few battle items were enough to take care of them. Beating Brazil let me obtain the final piece of the 4th anti-alien crystal, which would be extremely helpful. And I would need any tiny bit of help because the next level is the floating continent, the second hardest stage in Into the Future. The stage itself is almost an exact replica of Floating Continent in Chapter 1. There's angel hippos and doges at the very start, as well as a few other enemies, and upon hitting the base, the alien boar appears. This was the level that gave me huge amounts of trouble in Chapter 1, and the level that's going to make me suffer even more in Chapter 2. Hey, but who knows? Maybe everything I did up to now would make me strong enough to the point where I can win easily. I mean, I have Professor Abyss now, additional base health, a new cat cannon, and not to mention my new anti-alien crystal. What could possibly go wrong? Apparently, everything. Nothing I had worked. My first attempt with Professor Abyss went horribly. Professor Abyss couldn't even make it past the first wave of angel hippos. It didn't even matter which form Professor Abyss was in because she had no abilities against angels in the first place. To me, this wasn't actually too surprising. In NASA, Professor Abyss could only shine because her 2 target types were the only 2 types of enemies there. Professor Abyss was the perfect cat in those circumstances, but only for that one very specific situation. In reality, when you take Professor Abyss out of those circumstances, she's actually just another mediocre cat. Speaking of mediocre cats, Bora. Just like Professor Abyss, Bora couldn't even get past the first wave of angel hippos at the very beginning. Against any other type than aliens, Bora just becomes another mediocre cat. The rest of the cats also didn't stand a single chance either. Jizo's amazing anti-angel DPS could easily wipe out the first wave of angels, but stood no chance against the alien boar. Paris's high DPS also let her beat the first wave of angels, but was also quickly shut down by the alien boar. Those were my 4 best candidates to beat the floating continent, and none of them stood a single chance. So, was this it? Was this finally where the challenge would end? Well, no. The odds of this working were extremely low, but there was one option left. That option was Bora. But didn't I just say he was another mediocre cat like Professor Abyss? Yes, but there is one huge difference between Bora and Professor Abyss. Bora is an uber rare, and Professor Abyss is a legend rare. The difference in their rarities aren't just about their drop chances, it's actually much deeper than that. While legend rares like Professor Abyss are among the best against their target traits, there are 2 huge advantages that uber rares have over legend rares. The first is Cat's Eyes. Like I said before, Cat's Eyes can raise the level caps of my units by 10 levels or even 20 levels later on. And an additional 10 levels is around a 25% increase in both health and damage, which is a huge amount. There are cat's eyes to increase level caps of legend rares, but from where I am in the game right now, getting them would be impossible. That's one big advantage that Bora has over Professor Abyss. The second is the ability to evolve into a true form. Legend rares simply don't have any third evolutions, while uber rares do. And true forms can add massive buffs to health, damage, or even create new abilities for the uber rare to use. For Bora, these two differences can cause him to turn from just mediocre to something exceptional. Remember when I said I could try to evolve Bora, but obtaining the remaining 2 cat fruit at a 1% chance would take forever. That would be a last-ditch effort. That last-ditch effort would be used right now. With no other cats working, evolving Bora was my only hope left. But in order for Bora to evolve and become exceptional, I would need to get epic cat fruit. Originally, I had one from a lucky stage drop and another from a user rank reward, but I used one to evolve Sushi Cat to beat Mexico, so I was back to only one. That means to evolve Bora, I have to get 2 more epic cat fruit. The way to get epic cat fruit is very simple, but also very painful. Basically, I need to play a cat fruit stage over and over again for a 1.5% drop chance of an epic cat fruit. This is going to be so fun. You can practically hear the excitement oozing out of my voice. And after playing this stage over and over again for more than 100 times, I finally amassed a total of 1 epic cat fruit. Hooray. Although all that grinding still left me needing 1 more epic cat fruit, getting that last one wouldn't be too dependent on RNG. So first, I grinded a massive amount of XP and used that to upgrade my cats. Then I rode all my cat tickets and used them, then rode all my rare tickets and used them. And after upgrading my cats even more, I casually increased my user rank by 600 more levels and made it to user rank 2250. By reaching this rank, I finally obtained the last epic cat fruit I needed to evolve Bora. I also got the last uber cat's eyes required in order to fully max out Bora. And now it was done. All of my grinding and effort, all of my hopes and dreams, all put into this one cat. But even before I started the level, I already knew that this stage wouldn't be anywhere close to easy. In my attempts before, I couldn't even beat the first wave of angels. Just by evolving him, I still doubted if Bora could beat the angels at the start, and not to even mention the alien boar at the very end. And Bora's true form only grants him a 20% increase in both health and damage, which isn't exactly game-changing. And as it turned out, the angels didn't think so either. Even in his true form, Bora still couldn't beat the angels. Just like that, the challenge was over. Or so I thought, until I tried using Sniper Cat. You see, Sniper Cat changes everything. In the first wave of angels, there are 3 angel hippos. At first, I tried many different ways to beat them. I let my cat base tank the damage, let Bora tank the damage, let them both tank the damage, and so on. But nothing worked. With each angel hippo sitting at 110,000 health each, it takes 3 hits to kill them. Bora simply couldn't beat the angel hippos before they destroyed my base. This is where math comes in. Right now, Bora does 54,000 damage per attack. In 2 attacks, that's 108,000 damage, just 2,000 damage short of killing an angel hippo. If I just had something, just anything that could deal a tiny bit more damage to finish off the angel hippo. That's right. By itself, Bora's 20% increase in damage made no difference. In the end, both Bora's second and true form would kill the angel hippos in 3 hits regardless, leading to the same conclusion. But combined with a Sniper Cat attack and that 20% damage buff, Bora can now kill them in just 2 hits. By using Sniper Cat, the angel hippos were no longer any threat to me. At least, that's what I would have liked to say, but this won't be the last time they appear. But for now, beating the first wave of angels was quite easy. In fact, I could beat the first wave of angels without Bora taking any damage whatsoever. Just like in NASA, if I didn't have any meat shields to defend Bora, my base would become the meat shield. And with the help of my Sniper Cat, Bora could kill all the angels, although my base usually just barely survives. With just 1 battle item, the whole stage opened up to me. That's the first and easiest part of Floating Continent done. The second part is actually the journey from my base to the enemy base. This segment is probably the most frustrating part of this entire level. You'll see why soon. In this part, the angel hippos reappear, spawning one in around every 60 seconds. Those guys and sheep also appear, which buys some more time for another Bora to spawn. But the main threat here isn't the angel hippos that reappear. It's the angel doges. This enemy may seem pretty harmless, but remember, this is 1 slot battle cats. In this stage, every enemy matters. And yes, these guys do too. While angel doges aren't as tanky as angel hippos, they hit just as hard. In only 7 bites, an angel doge can take away 1/3 of Bora's HP. And unlike the angel hippos, these doges spawn quite often. But that's nothing to worry about, because like the angel hippos, I just need a method to beat them, right? Right? Well, it's time to reintroduce my good old friend, Mr. Enemy Spawn RNG. Yup, the thing that traumatized me in NASA is back, and it's even worse than before. If you thought Enemy Spawn RNG was already bad enough in NASA, well, you're in for a ride. Almost everything in Floating Continent is affected by Enemy Spawn RNG. Those guys, the sheep, angel hippos, and angel doges are all affected by it. And because of that, every attempt I play will never be the same. It's a gigantic butterfly effect where any slight change in when an enemy spawns can heavily influence the level. To see exactly what I mean, let's take a look at the Angel Doge, the main threat of this section. Because of enemy spawn RNG, the Angel Doge has a 25 to 50 second window of when it can spawn in. So whether or not Bora kills the Angel Doge without taking too much damage entirely depends on when it spawns. For example, here's the most ideal scenario. Bora is attacking those guys, and right when his attack is about to land, the Angel Doge enters his range. That kills the Angel Doge with 0 damage done to Bora. Hooray! But let's say the Angel Doge that was perfectly killed by Bora spawned just 1 second later. This perfect scenario you're seeing right now is going to become an absolute nightmare. Once again, Bora would attack those guys, but this time, instead of killing the Angel Doge perfectly, he's going to barely miss. That 1 second delay allows the Angel Doge to barely stay out of Bora's attack radius, which lets it live to see another day. Well, by another day, I mean just 8 more seconds until Bora can attack again. But still, during those 8 seconds, the Angel Doge can attack up to 6 times, which equals to almost a third of Bora's HP. Just from a 1 second spawn difference, Bora can go from flawlessly killing an Angel Doge to losing a third of his health. Depending on enemy spawn RNG, there can be 5 to 6 Angel Doges that appear before I activate the boss. That's 5 to 6 interactions in which Bora can lose tons of health or come out completely unharmed. And every enemy that spawns in this level affects these interactions as well. If those guys that Bora was attacking spawned 1 second later or earlier, that can also completely change whether Bora takes more damage or not. The timings of each and every enemy that spawns all indirectly affect my interactions with the bigger threats like the Angel Hippos and Angel Doges. And even those interactions all affect how well I do against the boss of this stage, the Alien Boar. While I might have made it seem like getting to the Alien Boar was going to be extremely difficult, it's actually pretty easy. The real difficult part is getting to the Alien Boar with a high amount of HP left on my Boras. Because even if I do make it to the Alien Boar, it doesn't matter if my Boras are half dead by the time they start fighting the boss. The reason why the second part of this stage is so frustrating isn't because it's hard. It's because even though I'm not even facing the boss yet, I still need ridiculously good RNG to even have a chance at beating the boss later on. I just have to hope my Boras make it to the enemy base with a decent amount of HP left, and only then will I have the smallest chance to win. Because just getting to the Alien Boar with a decent amount of HP left isn't enough. There's still another problem left that I've struggled with before. The Alien Boar's 50% knockback ability. Like I said in Chapter 1, this ability can continuously stunlock my Bora by interrupting his attack animation. It doesn't matter how tanky Bora is, or how much damage he does against aliens, if he can't fight back in the first place. Getting to the boss with a high amount of HP left on my Boras was already extremely hard to pull off. Now I also need to get extremely lucky to win against the alien boar itself. If enemy spawn RNG wasn't already enough, I now have to deal with normal RNG. But in the end, it's all up to luck. And if I learned anything from NASA, it's that as long as I keep trying, eventually I will win. I just have to believe that. After about 200 more attempts, I'm proud to announce that I am now even more miserable than before. During those 200 attempts, I actually made some progress. While I didn't beat the boss, I got amazingly close to doing so. In fact, almost too close. To the point where it feels like the game is mocking me. I did some simple math, and to kill the alien boar, Bora needs to attack it 7 times. But land just 6? 1% HP left. Why? Apart from Bora and Sniper Cat, I had no other way of dealing damage. There was nothing I could do but get that extra hit in. And because of this, every time I would have beaten the level, I just barely came up short. I mean, at 2 or 3%, that would suck. But having it perfectly at 1% every time is just plain brutal. Attacking the alien boar only 7 times may seem pretty easy, but because of Bora's slow attack speed and the alien boar's knockback ability, it's much harder than you would think. I mean, after 250 tries, I still never pulled it off. For context, it took me about 150 tries to beat NASA. This was going to take a while. I lost track a long time ago, but I think I was sitting around the 400 attempt mark when it finally happened. Something like a miracle, a light in the dark, a blessing granted from the heavens, well, you get the point. I got lucky. Really lucky. The run started off pretty well. I beat the first wave of angels, and from there, I had pretty good luck on my way to the enemy base. My interactions with the angel doges weren't perfect, but they weren't terrible either. The angel hippos also weren't much of a problem. Then the boss came out. My Boras got a decent amount of hits in, and the run was going pretty smoothly. I also didn't get too unlucky with the knockbacks, which also helped quite a bit. I got the first knockback on the boss, which meant that it was down to half health. But from there, the run started going downhill. One of my Boras died, and then so did my second. Everything was now up to my third Bora. And right when I thought I was dead for sure, it happened. My third Bora delivered the final blow onto the boss. I actually couldn't describe how happy I was when this happened. After 400 tries of attempt after attempt after attempt, I actually won. All those hours, all those attempts were finally given some sort of meaning. But things don't always work out the way you want in life. In my case, I was extremely hopeful. But hope leads to expectations. And expectations lead to disappointment. At the point where I felt everything was within my grasp, I lost it all at the same time. Beating the alien boar isn't the end-all be-all to this stage. After beating the boss, the next obstacle I have to face are the Cyberhorns. To be more precise, 5 of them. These guys are actual tanks. While it takes 7 hits to kill the alien boar, to kill these guys, it takes 3 hits each. That's basically almost half of the alien boar's health. That may seem like a lot, and well, it is a lot, but because of their much slower movement speed, they aren't as hard to beat as you would think. But still, with 1 weakened Bora left against 5 more Cyberhorns, there was nothing I could do but watch as my dreams crumbled down in front of me. 400 attempts. 400 attempts, and I finally got lucky enough to beat the alien boar. But that still wasn't enough. No matter how far I reached, my chances of winning just kept slipping further and further away from me. The angel hippos at the start, the journey to the enemy base, the fight with the alien boar, and now winning against 5 more Cyberhorns? Those odds just felt impossible. And to make matters even worse, I couldn't even do anything about it. Ever since Bora kept losing, you might have been wondering about something. Why can't I just roll for a better Uber to beat this stage? The problem is, out of the almost 200 Ubers in this game, I can't think of a single one more suited to beat this level than the very cat I'm using right now. No matter what Uber I try to roll for, none of them would be nearly as good as Bora. Everything about Bora just makes him perfect to beat this stage. His massive damage and resistance, combined with his high base stats, just makes him ideal to fight the alien boar. And combine that with a quick cooldown, and you have an alien-killing monster. No other Uber could match that. But even so, to beat this stage, a monster simply wasn't enough. I also had to get insanely lucky. 400 attempts were a lot, but with no other options, there was nothing else I could do but to keep trying. Against these impossible odds, this was the only way I could win. And maybe this time I could reach far enough to grab hold of that victory. Guys, I finally did it. I finally did absolutely nothing. In the last 2 months, I've played this stage more than 1,000 times. I've fought the angel hippos, made my way to the enemy base, fought the alien boar, lost, and then did this all over again. And after doing this for 1,000 more attempts, I still haven't won a single time. On 3 occasions, I beat the alien boar, but in the end, I couldn't beat the cyberhorns. Every time I lost, I would slowly lose my will to keep trying. And eventually, I just stopped. Everything felt pointless. No matter how much effort I put into this stage, it felt like nothing would change. In this hopeless situation, there was a huge question to be asked. Should I just give up? Should I just end the challenge here? I mean, after playing this stage 1,500 times, I still wasn't able to win. Ultimately, this level revolved around luck. But if I did get the perfect luck, would it even be enough for me to win? And even if that was possible, how many tries would it take for me to pull that off? Thousands? Tens of thousands? 1,000,000? If that were the case, there was no way I was going that far to pull this off. The point is, without knowing my odds of beating this stage, I didn't know whether to give up or not. But in the end, I had to choose. So I decided 1 week. A week where I would only eat, sleep, and play Battle Cats. If I didn't beat the floating continent by the end of it, I would just end the challenge there. And if I did beat it, the challenge would continue, and the video would hopefully have a happy ending. But I know what you're thinking. What about you, Souptasta? Playing only Battle Cats for a whole week? What about your life? Well, I never had one in the first place, but I do appreciate your concern. Soon enough, the week ended, and so did all of my attempts. If I won, it would make all the grinding I put in worth every single second, and the challenge would continue. If I lost, all the time I put into this stage would become useless, and the challenge would end right here. So, without too much more delay, here is the single best attempt I had throughout this whole week. Whether I win or lose here, I would accept whatever outcome that came from this attempt. As you would imagine, the first part of this stage went perfectly. After all, what you're seeing now is the very best attempt I've had from a whole week of grinding. However, there was just one tiny change I made during this week that was different from before. By using the first two those guys at the very start, I can send out Bora 15 seconds earlier than normal, while also having him hide behind his cat base, where he wouldn't take any damage. This lets my other Boras spawn 15 seconds earlier than normal, and who knows, maybe those 15 seconds would end up saving me in the end. Anyways, after sending out Bora, I timed my cat cannon perfectly so that my sniper cat could shoot the Angel Hippo, while also barely missing the Angel Doge. Getting the timing down on this was pretty hard, but this also lets my cat base survive with a lot more HP left than usual. From there, the rest of the Angel Hippos were cleared out using Bora and Sniper Cat. Just like that, the first part of this stage was cleared flawlessly. Next came the journey to the enemy base, and unlike before, how well I do in this part is entirely up to enemy spawn RNG. And here, every tiny bit of damage I take is going to heavily influence the final outcome of this attempt. Then the first threat of this part appeared, the Angel Doge. And luckily, my Bora killed it perfectly without taking any damage. A single bite from an Angel Doge deals almost as much damage to Bora than the alien boar itself, and over time, that damage starts to add up. To even have a chance at winning, I needed to have this level of luck throughout this entire part. Fortunately, this run delivered. Another Angel Hippo came, and shortly after, another Angel Doge. The Angel Doge only got one bite off, and I killed the Angel Hippo without taking any damage. A while later, an Angel Doge appeared, and for the second time, it didn't even get to attack one of my Boras. After that, another Angel Hippo appeared, and I killed it quickly, followed by another Angel Doge, which met the same fate as the Angel Hippo. And with that, I had finally reached the enemy base. In total, I've only taken 4 attacks from Angel Doges and 2 hits from an Angel Hippo. This was, by far, the very best luck I've ever gotten in this part of the stage. But even so, that amazing luck would become worthless if I didn't get lucky against the boss of this stage, the Alien Boar. To me, this was the most nerve-wracking part of this stage. As much as I could time my slow beams and sniper cat shots, ultimately, the only thing I could do was watch and pray that I get lucky. And oh boy, did I get lucky. Everything that happened went as good as perfect. My Boras barely got interrupted, and soon enough, I got the first knockback on the Alien Boar. After that, my Boras kept getting knocked back for a bit and killed a Cyberhorn. And then, finally, it happened. I beat the Alien Boar. But of course, this isn't the end of this stage. Not by a long shot. I've already killed 1, but there were still 4 Cyberhorns I had to kill. An obstacle that even after thousands of attempts, I've never even beaten once before. Still, for the first time in any of my attempts, I had all 3 of my Boras survive the fight with the Alien Boar. And after tanking a lot of hits from an Angel Hippo, the second Cyberhorn was dead. A while later, and the same happened with the third. But then, things took a sudden turn for the worse. Out of nowhere, an alien crocodile came in and finished off 2 of my weakened Boras. Eventually, my third Bora killed it, but not before taking a lot of damage himself. And sadly, at that point, my third Bora died after dealing his final blow onto the 4th Cyberhorn. A bit later, and my 4th Bora came in and finished the job. Now, it was just up to killing the final Cyberhorn. My Bora got 1 attack off, and a while later, a second attack, and then, finally, I killed the last Cyberhorn. I finally did it. I won. I did the impossible. I beat the odds. But at that moment, 2 things occurred. My Bora died to an Angel Hippo, and the Angel Hippo was killed by my Sniper Cat. And emerging from all that chaos was 1 single Angel Doge. And in its path was a very damaged cat base. It felt like time stopped at that moment. Bora's cooldown was almost up, but I didn't know whether I could get him out in time. The Angel Doge reached my base and started to attack. And 1 second before my base was destroyed, Bora killed the Angel Doge. If that Angel Doge just attacked one more time, I would have lost. And now, with all of the major threats gone, it was just a matter of time until I made my way to the enemy base. Eventually, after fighting these enemies for a while, that's exactly what I did. And at last, after a long journey, I won. It was finally done. After winning, I felt so many things at once. Happiness, excitement, disbelief, but most of all, relief. Relief that I got lucky enough to win. Relief that this stage was truly possible. Relief that all the effort I put into this stage had actually meant something in the end. From the very first time I've ever played this stage, I've come quite a long way. At first, I couldn't even get past the Angel Hippos at the very start, but eventually, I began to slowly learn and fight my way through the Angel Doges, Alien Boar, and Cyberhorns. And in the end, I did what I had once thought was impossible. Finally, all the pain and suffering was going to be over. That was something I wish I could say from the bottom of my heart. Because this challenge is far from over. In Into the Future, there's a stage that's even harder than the floating continent. A stage even more difficult, even more challenging. Floating continent was hard to reach. But if I stretched out my arm far enough, eventually I would reach it. But the moon, no matter how far I stretch my arm, there's no reaching something that's 240,000 miles away from me. In NASA and the floating continent, I always had a chance. A small hope that maybe, just maybe, if I kept trying, I would win. But the moment I stepped a foot into this stage, I already knew. The strength required to win against this stage was far out of my reach. At first, I thought the moon would be easy. I mean, in Chapter 1 of Into the Future, I beat the moon on my first try. Unlike in the floating continent, the moon is only ever filled with aliens, so naturally, I thought that Bora could carry me again. Naturally, I was completely and utterly wrong. At the start of this stage, a small wave of weak aliens appear, all of which Bora can easily defeat. After that, there's just a small period where nothing spawns, all the way up until Bora hits the enemy base, where another small wave of aliens appear. This wave does hurt a bit, but nevertheless, Bora can clear it just fine. Fine. Everything is fine. And then the boss appears. At over 1.5 million HP and 20,000 damage per hit, the Corrupted Valkyrie is a literal flying calamity. Even with all his anti-alien buffs, Bora just gets slaughtered by her without even a single chance of fighting back. In the end, Bora could only get the boss down to 60% HP. For the rest of my units, it didn't go any better. In fact, it went a whole lot worse. Both of Professor Abyss's forms, Paris, Jizo, Cameraman, and even Bora's first form, all failed. And not a single one of them came anywhere close to dealing the amount of damage Bora did. Without a doubt, Bora was the best Uber in the game to fight the moon. With his high stats and anti-alien abilities, Bora could easily destroy any level filled with aliens. Up until now, Bora hadn't failed me a single time. But the moon was an exception. After failing over and over again, the limits of what Bora could do were starting to show. Even after dozens of tries, I still never got the boss below 50% of her max HP. Unlike in the floating continent, there wasn't much RNG involved in the moon. While I might have demonized RNG in the floating continent, that RNG was precisely the reason why I was able to win. Because of the absurd amounts of RNG in that level, every attempt was completely different from each other. That meant for most of my attempts, my Boras would get destroyed by angels at the start, but it also meant getting one incredibly lucky run. But in the moon, each of the attempts I made largely remained consistent. However, there was some RNG involved in the moon, like enemies spawning at the right times to stall, the lemurs not landing any weakens, and my Boras hitting all their attacks. And that tiny bit of RNG meant only one thing to me: hope. So I thought maybe, just maybe, if I got the pixel perfect RNG, it would be enough to kill the corrupted Valkyrie. That was the plan. And then I got the corrupted Valkyrie below 40% of her HP. In Battle Cats, there's an ability called Strengthen. It's already appeared a couple of times in Into the Future, most notably in the Alien Plutos. With this ability, once a unit falls below a certain percentage of their HP, the damage they deal is increased. And for the corrupted Valkyrie, once her health dips below 40%, her already insane DPS is doubled. Getting the boss this low was already nearly impossible to pull off. Maybe in a 1 in a million miracle chance, I would be able to be the corrupted Valkyrie without this ability. But to finish off the corrupted Valkyrie while she deals double the damage was just plain impossible. Still, even then, I kept trying. But as much as I altered my timings or strategy, nothing changed. In the end, none of it mattered. The outcome was always the same. From the very start of this challenge, I've always known there was a limit. A limit that no matter how hard I struggle, I would never overcome. The harsh reality was, with one slot, there was only so much I could do in the game. In the end, this was all that my effort amounted to. This was the limit of what I could do. Against an unbeatable boss, there wasn't any point in continuing further. Without any hope of progress, the challenge was officially over. That would be the case, of course, if I didn't plan for this from the very beginning. You see, there's a cat that I've had from the very start of Into the Future. A cat so overpowered, so utterly broken, that if I used it, this video would just be a gigantic boring compilation of this cat destroying everything. So I decided not to use it, at least not until the time when I was truly stuck. And now, it seemed like that time had finally come. But to see exactly how I got this cat, we'll have to go back near the start of Into the Future. That day was dark, rainy, and depressing. Against the great abyss, nothing was working. My best cats, Dragon and Sushi Cat, stood no chance against the boss. Was this where the challenge was going to end? But then a ray of hope shone through the rain. The elemental pixies. If I got one of them, maybe, just maybe, I would stand a chance against the alien face. And so I rode and prayed from the bottom of my heart that I would get a good elemental pixie. And I was blessed. I got Bora, the perfect Uber for this challenge. But I got even more than I bargained for. During that 11 draw, another miracle had happened. A 1 in 300 chance. An incredibly rare occurrence. The legend rare Lumina. Bora was the best Uber in the game against aliens. But by far, the best cat against aliens wasn't even close to being Bora. That title belonged to Lumina. At first, with impressive health, decent DPS, and a low cooldown, Lumina doesn't seem too overpowered. That is, until you look at her abilities. Lumina is insanely tough towards aliens, giving her 6 times more HP against them, up to a total of 800,000 HP. On top of that, Lumina's second ability, Weaken, makes any alien she hits deal 50% less damage. This effect lasts until Lumina attacks again, which basically means her health is doubled. And with both of her abilities combined, Lumina effectively has the same amount of HP as the corrupted Valkyrie herself. This was how broken Lumina was. And now it was time for the final showdown. Lumina, my last hope, against my most powerful enemy yet, the corrupted Valkyrie. The battle wasn't even a battle. It was a one-sided massacre. Throughout that entire fight, only one of my Luminas died. And at last, the seemingly unreachable moon was within my grasp. Finally, for real now, the challenge was over. The video was over. It was done. The journey took a while, but in the end, I reached the goal I was aiming for. From struggling to be an alien moth, I came quite a long way. And if not for every time I logged into the game, every time I used my cat energy, or every time I re-attempted a level, I wouldn't be where I am right now. This journey was built upon those small stones I stacked each and every day. And without those stones, I wouldn't be able to reach the heights I aspired to go to. And although I decided to use Lumina in the end, like Bora, like anyone else, even she had a limit. But that's for another time. For now, let's end it on a happy note. Thank you for watching. Well, that's it for the video. If you've made it this far, leave a happy face or something in the comments. Also, if you want to see more content like this, leave a like and subscribe. Okay, see you all next year.